Thank you so much for inviting me. I can hardly tell you how happy I am to be here today. It is definitely the longest trip I have ever taken for a lecture, and so I'm very curious what will happen today. I have brought you lots of information. Thank you very much for that beautiful introduction, and of course I want to thank you guys from Germany to bring me here. It's gonna be a great time, I'll promise that. Do I have my presentation? Perfect. I'll try to move on the stage because you know, when it gets more than 5 minutes, I find it pretty boring when someone just stands behind this thing that looks like a dictator all the time. So, first I'm going to tell you little thing about me. We'll talk about Germany later. I have a few questions for you. And then in the end, I will not only talk about evolutionary humanism, but I will also talk about the apocalypse. Because everyone is talking about the apocalypse right now. The world is going down, you know that? Yeah, definitely. And so I will finish my lecture with that. Okay, I brought you a nice little picture of myself being born in 1980 in West... Okay, that's a pretty good start. Okay, then. I will have to use my laptop anyway. I'm born 1980 in West Berlin. I will tell you later why it is important that it's West Berlin. But since I'm born in 1980, I will turn 30 next year. I guess. Roundabout. Right for that presentation, I called up my parents to ask them how many sisters and brothers I got. And they had to count as well. I have many sisters and brothers for a German family. And my mother is a teacher, and my father is an organ player at the Catholic Church. My uncle is a teacher, my other uncle is a teacher, my next uncle is a teacher, my aunt is a teacher, and my grandpa was a teacher as well. So if you at any time ask yourself, what's wrong with that guy? I'm just a natural born smartass. But as you know, you don't see me praying on this picture. So I am also, I need my water, I am also a natural-born atheist. When we will talk later about religious education, this is a very important point, because all of us are born without the belief in any god or gods or goddesses or unicorns or whatever. It's just a matter of education. Oh, it's another cell phone. Okay, let me tell you the difference between West Berlin or West Germany and East Germany. While the people of West Germany could travel the world in their fancy cars, you know that the people from East Germany couldn't. And while we had this thing going on, Christianity, the people in East Germany didn't. They had socialism going on. So it is no wonder that in 1987, you can see me up here with my family. It's my mom missing because she's Santa Claus. They put my mom in the Santa Claus stuff. I didn't know that when I was 7 years old. My sister didn't know. The other sisters and brothers weren't born yet. But this is very typical for the German household. Let me try my mouse again, because I really don't want to... Yeah, it works. 1 year later, I was brought to my Holy Communion. And I'm going to tell you about this. You can see me... It doesn't work. I'm very sorry. Okay, it did work. Maybe I'm just too far away from the Bluetooth connection. You can see me up here. Little 8-year-old Philipp. And you know how communion works? Most of you probably not. I'll just tell you. The thing is, when you get to the Holy Communion, they give you a little, it's called Oblate in Germany, and then you drink, I guess it's just not red wine, but something similar for kids. And in that moment, the Holy Spirit is supposed to come to you. So I put that Oblate in my mouth, and what do I have to tell you? Nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. The world didn't change at all. I didn't get any new insight. I was really curious about, wow, what's going to happen now? Because when you're a kid and you go to Catholic church, my dad is a church musician, so I went to the church pretty often, mostly not sitting there down praying, but sitting up with him at the organ. But then again, you see all these adults getting those oblate, and you think, like, wow, just 1 year ago, I will have mine, then everything will change. Because, to be honest, from now on, I don't really get what they're talking about. You know, they keep being Catholic, and I don't get it. So maybe with that oblate, I will get it, but I didn't get it. Nothing absolutely happened, and I had to tell the priest, yes, I believe in God, from an 8-year-old. And that was a lie. And nothing happened as well, so I thought, okay, I could actually quit it, to be honest. I had nothing more to do with that. And in my teenage life, there was only a few situations where religion really came on to me, because I became a really big Simpsons fan. And there's Bart Simpson praying at the table, God, we paid for all this ourselves, so thanks for nothing. And I found that pretty funny. And so I had nothing to do with religion until I got to university and I read a book of Steven Pinker. Steven Pinker tells us 3 very important things. The first thing is we're not a blank CD slate, not a CD blank. So we're not born blank, but we are born with, biological things. Religion tells us completely different. Completely different. So that was the first point. He also tells us that there is no ghost in the machine, which is the most important thing for the soul, And without the soul, the whole Christianity thing doesn't make any sense at all. There's no afterlife, no God can control you in any way, and if there's no soul, Catholicism, Christianity is actually not a real thing. So, and then we're not noble savages, so we're not born as good people at all in the beginning. So, later on I came to the 4 horsemen. Of course, you all know them. But up until that time, to be honest, what I thought about religion was, okay, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing for those people who were brought up with it. I don't care about it. It's really weird. But then I met that German guy. His name is Dr. Carsten Frerk. And Dr. Carsten Frerk told me that there are huge, enormous financial grants from the state to the church. He also told me that there are massive legal influences, I'll talk about that later, and that that we actually live in a church republic. And that made me kind of furious, because, just having religion as a spiritual hobby, it's absolutely fine for me. Pray to whatever God you want, or how many gods you want, or how many arms they should ever have. But if religion becomes a part of the state, then we have a problem. Pretty close to that, there was the Atheist Bus campaign you probably all know about. And we started that Atheist Bus campaign in Germany. It went a bit different, because we were asking all the public transport organizations to print our message, es gibt mit an Sicherheit grenzender Wahrscheinlichkeit keinen Gott, there's most probably no God, on the buses. And they said, well, yeah, it's no problem. If you have the money, you can make atheist thing on our buses. We don't care, You can do whatever you want. So we collected the money, and we went on to them, and they said, whoa, you got the money? Well, what can we say? And then they came up with an excuse saying, sorry, all of our advertisements has to be ideologically neutral. Ha, ha, ha. You can see Jesus ads everywhere, Bible ads everywhere. And so the campaign actually became a big success, because we rented an own bus and drove with that through the whole country. I'll tell you later about what happened. Especially with young people, because, the people, we were thinking wow, they will be upset, when we go to southern Germany, to Bavaria, to Bayern, and people will say, oh, no, you're telling there's no God, what can you say? No, most of the people were absolutely friendly to us. I got a member of the Giordano Bruno Foundation that was mentioned before, which is a think tank for enlightenment and humanism. You can see here a drawing of Janos. Janos is a really very famous book writer for children's books. And there are also very Catholic and Protestant parents, you know, really loving Janos. And when he published that, they were all so disappointed. You know, we've been reading Janos books when our kids were so little, and now he's going to get out something like this. And we said, yeah, sorry. He actually thought about it. And then I became a professional atheist. This is what I call myself today. You don't really make much money with professional atheism. It's a very hard job to do, to be honest. This is why I'm a writer also. I'll tell you about that in a second. But you can see me here with one of the most famous young TV moderators. He's a pretty cool guy. He's actually very funny, as you can see. He made fun of my hair. But I think he only did this because he was envy of my hair. You can see that. Because, well, he doesn't. Okay, I'm an author, so you say writer or author, I don't really get the difference. This is my first book. I had to become a substitutionary teacher. Substitutionary teacher? So, a fake teacher, actually. I was starting my job for the Atheist Bus campaign. I needed money. And so I went to a school because I know they needed teachers. So I said, hey, how about me working as a teacher for you? You would do that because we're looking for teachers so much. Please work for us as a teacher. I said, well, I'm not a real teacher, you know that. Don't mind. Can you calculate? I said, yes. Oh, you're going to be a mathematics teacher. And I hear you play the guitar? Yes, I do. So you're a music teacher. Can you run? Yes, or you're a sports teacher. That was a pretty weird time. That was my first book. I wrote 2 other books in between, but more important today, as mentioned before, is Gottlos glücklich, Godless happy, why we would be better off without religion. And I have published, no, I haven't. Today is the 21st, so 4 days from now, my 3rd book will be published. It's called Me Go Parliament, how I promised my daughter to save the world. And this is what I'll be talking about in the last minutes. Okay, so far about me. I brought you a very nice picture of our Chancellor Angela Merkel, as the Time magazine called her, Chancellor of the Free World. And she's here with Pope France. I keep wondering what they're talking about in that moment. She's probably saying, hey, how about you give me that ring? What do I have to give you? And he said, just give me 3 little boys and I'll be fine. I'm very sorry, I know it's a bit German humor, but you know that Pope France promised to clean out with all the problems concerning that. It didn't really work out. So in 1919 in Germany, in the Constitution, we wrote down that there is no state church, that the church should be separated from state in any way. That is 100 years ago now. Exactly 100 years. And you will see now how it didn't really work out. And I have to talk about the most common thing with that, and that is the church taxes in Germany. We do have a system of church taxes, and it was actually, you know, it came before, but when Hitler grabbed for power, they had to do it about an Ermächtigungsgesetz. I don't know how to call it, like an empowerment law or something. Yeah, empowerment law. And all the parties had made a decision. There was one party left, and that was the Catholic Party. So Hitler came to the Catholics and said, if you vote for that empowerment law, I will give you very nice grants. And that is what we call the Reichskonkordat, which is a very hard German word, Reichskonkordat. I don't know how to translate that. And part of that Reichskonkordat is that everyone has to state his confession. Oh, it's still German. His confession in his tax payroll. You know, you have a tax payroll, and you have to tell the state whether you're Catholic or Protestant or non-confession or whatever. Those are the main religions. And if you are Catholic or Protestant, then you have to pay church taxes. And the funny thing is that whenever in church there is a baptism, probably one of the church members runs to the office and say, hey, we got a new member, we got a new member. And they will write down that this baby is now Catholic. I once went to a baptism where there was, I guess, a 6-month-old baby was baptized. And the priest said, I'm very happy that the baby came here on its own. Because they actually know, it felt to me like a joke, they actually know that it's a really dirty deal. You grab a kid, you explain it to be Catholic or Protestant or whatever, and later they have to pay church taxes like 8 to 10% of your payroll tax. Wow. And this is the result actually of Nazi Germany, but it's still valid in Germany. I really can't understand it. And the next thing is that it's a big task to collect all these taxes. It's not for free because you have to employ people to collect it and everything. And it makes 1.5 billion euros. And we all pay that, also the not religious people. Okay, now we talk about welfare organizations. The welfare organizations in Germany called Diakonie and Caritas, Protestant and Catholic. And as you can see, they have a very good marketing, okay? They run hospitals and retirement homes and hospices and kindergartens and schools and workshops for disabled. And the thing is that all these institutions cost around 42 billion euros per year. Okay? And this is why this church says we are a very important part of the German state. If it wasn't for us, if we wouldn't be there, then a very important part would break away. But maybe you can take a guess. How many percent of that 42 billion euros are paid by the church? Could anyone take a guess? What do you think? How many percent? You say none. You destroyed my joke. Come on. It is really 1.8%. So this is what we call the Caritas quote. The 1.8%, this is what they pay, and the rest is paid by the public. So whenever they say, yeah, we're the most important part, it's just not true. They're basically lying. And I think this is just one of those problems, because they have a very, very smart thing going on. You can see a German caricature here. It's by my friend Jacques Tilly. He's also in the foundation. And it says, fired because of adultery. And the thing is that Caritas and Diakonie, they have special labor laws, like very special, you couldn't actually call them laws, that say whenever you do not apply to the moral standards of the church, then you can be fired, like from one day to the other, or you don't even come up to the application. When they see an application, say, oh, he's not from the church. They don't do it all the time, but this is what the law says. And I think this can't actually really be happening in a modern state, to be honest. It's also not just for adultery, of course, it's for gays, it's for non-Christians, it's for everyone who does not apply to the moral standards. And I think this is actually one of the biggest scandals. We have hope from the European Court of Human Rights, because they had 2 cases now where they said, no, sorry, Germany, you can't do that. But obviously, German judges don't really like the EU telling them what to do. Okay, so we'll be talking about religious education in public schools. Because also part of the Reichskonkordat was that there is something in the constitution of Germany that says that there is religious education in every part of Germany. And not information about religion, but really religious education. And so I tried to collect some words that shows what's actually happening in a school and what's happening in a church. Because in a school, it's about knowledge, while in a church,
it's about faith. In a school, it's about questions, while in a church, it's about faith. You might see a pattern here. In schools, it's about doubt. In church, it's about faith. In schools, it's about thinking. Church is about believing. Schools is about insights, while church is about confession. And then I made a word up. I don't know if you get it. But schools are about enlightenment and churches are about endarkenment. Thank you. And actually, you can say the same thing about theology in universities. Because theology, to be honest, is just not a science.
That is very important to say. It's the education of clerics. It's not science, because science is always open to new insights, while theology isn't. Theology says there is a God, whichever one. And from there on, they do their science, their pseudoscience. But this is the exact opposite, actually.
So you could write the same words behind of all of that, because theology is not science. This is one of the most important messages that we can send. I know that, students of theology and professors of theology, they really don't like hearing that, of course, but you always have to stress that out. So, you have probably heard about the March for Science
that was actually originated in the United States. We had that in Germany too. And we're having right here in front of the Brandenburger Tor someone saying, I can't believe I'm protesting for reality. Because that was said before, facing all that populism stuff, they just say whatever they want, just however they need their reality. And the thing is, if you're in discussion with really religious people, and not just even really religious people, and you talk about reality, then they will probably say, well, Philipp, there is no reality. So, sorry, everyone has its own reality. And I can say, well, I'm sorry, there is. We cannot always find out. And I'm not saying that I will always find out. But there is a reality. And if there is no reality, you have a problem
with a thing called randomness. And in that randomness, of course, you can say,
do you all know the flying spaghetti monster? How about the people from here, from India, Peria people? You know the flying spaghetti monster? I'm very disappointed. Please, flying spaghetti monster, don't be mad with them that they haven't ever heard of you. Because the main important thing is, whenever I speak to religious people, and they say, well, Philipp, you can't prove there's no God. Say like, well, that's true, I can't prove it. But you're the one who said so you're the one who has to prove it. It's very, very simple. Because whenever you don't have to prove it, I cannot come up with a flying spaghetti monster. And you can't prove there's no flying spaghetti monster, can you? I say, well, Philipp, it's obviously a fun religion. I say, well, your religion is obviously a fun religion too. What's the difference between a God and a flying spaghetti monster? There is absolutely no difference. I was talking to my pupils at school, and they said like, oh, Phil, you can't say there is no God. And I say, well, I didn't say there is no God. I say there's probably no God, and that those who claim there is a God, they have to prove it. Otherwise, I could be talking about Alofi. Alofi is a little dragon. That little dragon lives in my basement, and that little dragon says that you are not allowed to eat any more candy. What? I can eat candy however I want to say. Yeah, can you prove there's no Alofi? This is actually critical rationalism, which is one of the most important part of the humanism. You can say to people, you have to prove it. I think this is a very good argument when you talk to them, that you can always say, well, you get to randomness
when you just make it up. And so, why should we wonder that this is happening? Because when kids are brought up in religious kindergartens, and you keep telling them from the beginning on that there is a certain God or a flying spaghetti monster or whatever, they will probably believe it, because kids have no other choice just to believe their parents. I think it's a very bad thing to do to kids, to be honest. And I talk about indoctrination.
This is what they really don't like hearing, to be honest, again. But it is something like that. And whenever they say, well, Mr. Moller, I haven't been indoctrinated, I used to say, well, that you feel you haven't been indoctrinated is a good sign for a good indoctrination. It's not very nice of me to say that because, you know, it's a double bind, actually, they can't really get out of it. But it's true. If you are very, very convinced of it, that has not been indoctrination, I think it's a very good sign that it has been. And, you know, Caritas and Diakonie, they are running a lot of kindergartens. There is areas in Germany where you cannot find a kindergarten place without going to Caritas or Diakonie. Because actually, especially in the rural areas, they are so big that you cannot find a place. And then you go there, you say like, okay, it's the only place I'm going to get, so what's going to be happening to my kids? Will they have to pray here? Or you ask, is there religious education? And they say, no, there is no religious education. We just pray in the morning. We pray for food. Yeah, we're going to the church on the certain days and stuff. So you say, this is not religious education? No, we're not teaching the kids there is definitely a God. We're just making them an offer. You know, they call it an offer. And this is what I think is one of the biggest problems, that they even don't get it. And this is why I keep saying, what parents teach to their children, a secular state cannot intervene with that. You know, you cannot go to the parents and say, you are not allowed to teach your kids about religion. But using the infrastructure of a secular state for religious indoctrination, that is a problem. So if we spend 4 billion euros a day for religious education in schools, then we do have a problem. And if we tell little kids in kindergarten that there is a God, then we also have a problem.
Okay. I'm very sorry to show you that. I'll just show you probably for a very, very short amount of time. This is circumcision. We had a very big problem with circumcision
in Germany. I know it has been quite popular in the United States. I don't know how it is today. But in 2012, a Turkish boy was sent to the hospital because he was bleeding down there. So the doctor said, okay, what has happened? So the mother said, well, he was circumcised. And the doctor said, was there a medical reason for that? And the parents said, no, there was no medical reason. It's a cultural thing. So the doctor said, I'm sorry, but I have to tell the police. She was like, what? And this started a huge argument in Germany back then in 2012, because Jewish and Muslim societies were freaking out. They were raging that the Germans come up and say, this is not allowed. But the thing is, if there is no medical indication, I guess you say, and the patient is below 18 years old, you can't actually do it. It's a crime. It's a Körperverletzung. How do you say? It's hurting. It's hurting someone. So I know there are very, very different ways of female circumcision. I'm not going to compare that. But why shouldn't a law apply to boys and girls in the same way? Why is it allowed to circumcise boys, to cut off actually their most sensitive part of the whole body when they have never decided about it, and it's not allowed with girls? So we came up, we had this big campaign, My Body Belongs to Me, but we were not successful. In 2012, a law passed by the German Bundestag, by the German Parliament, that says that it's the decision of the parents if you can circumcise your son. Of course, it actually only applies to Jews or Muslims. And the Jews, you know, with German history, they said, Jewish life is not possible any longer when you ban circumcision. And we said, well, maybe we can have some time to think about it. But there was no time to think about it. They just passed the law in an extremely quick way. So now it's allowed. And I guess this is, again, a very good sign, therefore, that we're actually not living in a secular state. This one says, away with paragraph 219a. It's a very special thing. And I have to tell you something about it. In 1869, there was a pope, and he was completely crazy about Maria, yeah, Virgin Mary. Completely crazy. And then he said, well, if Virgin Mary got that child, and that child, you know, it wasn't done in a natural way, but in a spiritual way, then we have a problem with a thing called abortion. And so he said that in that moment where the semen and the, you say, egg are connected, this is when the soul goes into the child. Before that, in the Catholic Lehrmeinung, I don't know how you say, they said that it's going to take 3 months or maybe 6 months, but he was so crazy about Virgin Mary that he invented a new thing. And that was spontaneous soul. So in that moment.
Then we had a new law that says that abortion is
not allowed from the beginning on. Not allowed at all. It's a crime. It's murder, actually. And then in the 70s, German women said, my body, my choice. So after a hard fight, we had a new law saying, okay, it is still forbidden. It's still a crime, but we add another law, that is 218A, that will say, okay, in the first 3 months, and after you had information, you know you have to go to a certain place, and there will people be talking about you, and the aim of that talk will be that you do not do the abortion. And then there's 219A, and that is very interesting because it says that advertisement for abortion is forbidden. Okay, by advertisement you probably think of like really big ads saying buy one get two free or something. This is not what they mean. Even if you put an information on your website that says that you are providing that medical thing, that abortion, then it's already advertisement, and every doctor in Germany can be sent to the law because he advertises for that. So we had a big fight about this is not possible. You can see the Green Party here in front of the parliament. And again, to be honest, we were not successful. It is still valid that it is forbidden to tell on your website that you
do the abortions. Okay, another sign for not living in a secular state is that we have military bishops.
You can see that guy in the middle. He's obviously the priest. He seems very happy here. He's actually not a very happy guy because I have met him in a talk show.
And he talks like this. He's Mr. Moller. This is not possible that you talk about like this to God. This is absolutely not possible. You cannot talk about God like this.
He's very happy here, maybe because he's surrounded by many good-looking, strong men. I don't know. And I found
a very nice picture of that guy, which I brought for you.
Das ist Franz Josef Overbeck. Herr Moller, es geht auf keinen Fall, dass Sie so über Gott reden. Haben Sie mich da verstanden? Sind wir da klar?
This is how he talks.
Jawohl.
Wow. And you know, when I met him,
it was my first time in a talk show. My first time as a professional atheist, so to say. It was really hard talking to him because he uses this authority. You know, he will look you in the eyes. There's a very deep voice, and he has always these gestures that say, no, stop here, Moller. Yeah, this is not possible. Some people may be offended by what you're saying. Well, I'm offended by what you're saying.
And the funniest thing is that, you know, while he looks very happy here, this is one of his most famous quotes.
Homosexuality is a sin. We know that very precisely.
Well, probably they know it as precisely
as they knew about the position of the earth, or maybe about the origin of man. You know, obviously the Catholics never knew anything precisely. Everything they have said about reality turned out to be completely wrong. So obviously, this thing is
Also wrong, but he says more. He's a pretty funny guy. He says, human dignity and human rights are unthinkable without Christianity. Wow! Can we go back to a history lesson here, Mr. Franz Josef Overbeck? You know, it's just weird. Then he says, without religion and religious institutions, even being human is impossible.
It's being human is impossible, you know. If one of you should not be Christian, you're actually not here. Because you are impossible. It's just not working. I don't know, but his most funny quote, he's a really funny guy.
His most funny quote, he doesn't look very funny to be honest, but his most funny quote is that the Lord likes the Catholics most. He really said that.
Out loud, you know, and he's probably convinced that it's true. But maybe this is how religion works, you know, you always have to be the best. And there is only one God, and that, or maybe, sorry, maybe many gods, and maybe the flying spaghetti monster. And that God loves you absolutely most, because you believe in Him. And this is what they tell the kids. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just...
Am I allowed to say swear words here? It's just crap. It's just nonsense. But the good thing, the only good thing about Lucky Franz, as I call him,
is that you can see up there, there's the temple he works in. And the red dots are all very professional and well-rated shrinks. So please, Franz Josef,
go and tell it to the shrink what you think about it. Okay, then we had another campaign going on.
It says, mein Ende gehört mir, my end belongs to me. And this is about assisted suicide. And this is actually the most problematic thing going on right now in Germany. We are waiting for a law in the next, say, 2 to 3 months that it becomes legal again. Because, like, all the professional Christians working in politics and in the churches, they had done very well lobby work to make sure that assisted suicide will be forbidden. And now it is. Actually, who you can see here, it's Uwe Christian Arnold. He called me like 2 months ago. He called me and said, "Hey Philipp, it's Uwe. How are you?" I say, "Well, I'm fine. How are you?" "Well, I'm not fine. I have cancer and I'll be dying today. I just wanted to say bye-bye. I had a very great time with you. You're such a cool guy. That's it." He was Germany's most popular, you say, assisted suicide doctor. And we fought for that law for months. But still, they won. I have to say, they won again. There is progress. I'll come to that later. But they won again in that case. And that means, because I would say, there is only one person deciding about my death. And that is myself. No priest, no politician, no doctor. And that is one of the most important things about humanism is
self-determination. So, do we live in a secular state? So and so, I would say. And that's the craziest thing about Germany. You know, in the United States, you have the free churches,
right? They go pretty crazy. But in Germany, the connection between state and church is still very, very good.
And that, by the way, costs us 19 billion euros per year. Besides the 42 billion for Caritas and Diaconie, which are in a good place. But 19 billion euros per year, so only Christianity can exist any longer. Because otherwise, actually, people would run away. I'll show you some figures about that right now, but I want to introduce you to Dr. Michael Schmidt-Salomon.
That is the head of the Giordano Bruno Foundation. He's a very cool guy. I like him a lot. I know him for 10 years now. He's the problem about him is he's super smart. You know, he's got an IQ like 150 or 60. He knows everything. I hate it. If I should ever go to a TV show, I could have him as my telephone joker because he reads books in minutes. Actually, it's crazy, and then he can remember everything. He's a very cool guy,
and he says that secular politics must be rational, evidence-based, and ideologically neutral. I know that we are
complaining on high standards in Germany compared to the rest of the world. But if this would apply to politics in the world, I am very sure that we would have much less problems.
This is what he says about good politics, about secular politics. Let me tell you a little thing about evolutionary humanism. You can see a friend of mine here. He's also in the foundation. He's called
Volker Sommer. He works with apes a lot. And the most important thing about evolutionary humanism is that we accept that we are animals. And it's not a problem. I mean, we have evolved from evolution like any other creature in this world. And I don't see why this should be a problem. Do you? You know that I talk to many Christian people saying, "Oh, Phil, you say we're animals." Oh. Then they say, "Maybe you are," and say, "Well, you are too." And they really feel insulted by that. I don't really get it. We are part of this biological world, and this is one of the most important messages of evolutionary humanism. The German population, as you can see here, religion-wise, is now actually very good, because we have that non-secular state, and we have a lot of politicians in a lot of religious politicians, and of course they decide very bad things. But as you can see, in Germany right now we have 25% Protestants, 28% Catholics, 5% Muslims, 4% others, including Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, it's 2% Jews, and 38% non-confessional people. And then I brought to you some very nice figures. There was a questionnaire in Europe, and young people, 212,665 young people in Europe, in these countries you can see there, between 18 and 34 were asked if they could be happy without a God. I know it doesn't say I can be happy without a God or I am happy without a God. It also doesn't say God is just a very bad idea. But honestly, if you're religious, you wouldn't say yes to that question.
This is how European people answered. So many European people could be happy without a God. And also, I trust religious institutions say, it's coming in a second. So many people trust religious institutions. Imagine yourself being a priest. I mean, don't, but...
If you see that figures, it's a very bad thing, actually, what's happening to them and their
institution. And then the most funny question is, are you religious? It's only 1,000 people asked, but still, it's a very good figure. The non-confessional people say, yes, 3% non-confessional. 97. Okay. But Protestants, only 18% of Protestants, of young Protestants, consider themselves to be religious in any way. Catholics, 21. So what's happening? Muslim, okay, Muslim some more. And overall, 19% only of the young people consider themselves religious. So in German population, maybe in 2030, we'll have probably more than 50%. Okay, and this is why we got the marriage for all. Finally, you can...
do you know that route? It's the signature move of Angela Merkel. She always does. So we put that nice colors behind it because finally the marriage for all is allowed in Germany. And as I said, this is because self-determination is the most important thing. You can see a picture here taken by my friend Rana. She was taken to Medina, to Mecca. And she said, "What the hell am I doing here?" So she put that picture, she Twittered it, and many women followed her, taking off their headscarves, which is a very, very great success. So I think something is moving there. And while we talk about self-determination in humanism, still there's an illusion of free will.
Schopenhauer on the left side said, man can do what he wants, but he cannot will what he wants. Which is a very, very big difference. And Albert Einstein said that those words helped him all the time throughout his life. So I think this is one of the most important things. So if you ask me about the meaning of life, I brought it to you. You can see it right here on that screen. It does not exist. There is no meaning of life unless you give it one. And if you look at the universe, obviously the whole universe is a completely meaningless place. I can define a meaning of life for me, and I brought you a nice picture for that. It's not riding a bike, okay?
But I think the meaning of life is helping people out of poverty. You can see the African woman riding a bike, which is an absolute step up from walking, you know? It's extremely, extremely expensive for them. So being happy and having progress, getting better, that is one meaning of life.
And Hans Rosling from Sweden, he told us that from the year 1800,
where 85% of the people in the whole world lived in extreme poverty, we lowered that rate to 12% in 2000 and something and 9% right now. So that is an absolutely success story. I know there's still way too many poor people in the world, but the direction is absolutely right. So I think we are on a good path.
and this is actually how I want to end again with Steven Pinker. If you want to read his book, I can absolutely recommend it. It's so big, but it's worth it. Because he tells us that the world is getting better and better by the minute. We have the Sustainable Development Goals by the United States, United Nations.
Yeah, that was Freud. And the thing is that those Sustainable Development Goals are absolutely not, a naive vision, a naive utopia. But we are really getting closer to it.
I know we have a problem with many points, but right now, especially with the climate action. So we will have to take care about that. But talking about overpopulation, I want to give you a last figure before I end my speech.
You know that people talk about overpopulation. You can see it everywhere. And you can hear people saying like, well, the human is like the cancer of the planet and we're just too many. I want to ask you a question.
If every human being would live in Sri Lanka, every human being existing right now on this world, how much space would they have? Do you have any idea?
Half of what? No. If every human being would live in Sri Lanka, how many place would everyone have? How many space? How many square feet? No space at all.
Well, you can grab a calculator and calculate it. It's 9 square meters. If everyone would live in Sri Lanka right now, you would have 9 square meters. I think this is if you look at that other picture, it's completely wrong. We're far away from that. We're not too many. This is what I want to say in the end. We are not too many.
And we won't be too many in 2100 when we turn like 11 billion. And we are not sinners. We are part of this world. And I think if we use good management and the ideas of humanism, then finally we can make it that every person in the world can live without hunger, without poverty, and maybe there might be liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Thank you.